Welcome into another edition of Pete's Pigskin Preview presented by RiverLand Roofing. I'm Neal McCready in the Clark Ford Studios, joined by my friend Pete DeWeese, the MPW Digital football expert from his home in Georgia. It is, by the time you watch this, it's basically Halloween, November 1st, right around the corner. We're in the final month of the season, the home stretch for Ole Miss, the Rebels getting ready, now ranked 7th in the country. Now getting ready to play the South Carolina Gamecocks. That game 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Ole Miss coming off of a 34-26 win at Oklahoma this past Saturday to improve to 7-1 overall, 3-1 in the SEC. South Carolina blew a fourth quarter lead at home against Alabama this past weekend to fall to 3-5 overall, 1-5 in the SEC. So we will we'll dive into the Gamecocks. We'll mostly look at the Gamecocks offense, LaNorris Sellers and company. Mike Shula, the embattled former Alabama coach, South Carolina offensive coordinator. Been protest on the USC campus about Shula. College football is a crazy world, Pete. It is that. I tell you what's not crazy is RiverLand Roofing. Unlike college football, where you never really know what you're going to get, with RiverLand Roofing, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get durable, high-performance roofing. How'd you like that for a segue? RiverLand stands above the rest as a licensed, insured, and GAF Master Elite certified roof replacement contractor with more than 60 years of combined experience. RiverLand specializes in roof repairs, replacements, and maintenance for both residential and commercial properties. RiverLand Roofing combines expert craftsmanship with cutting-edge roofing technology to ensure long-lasting protection for your home or business. Their team of manufacturer-trained specialists delivers top-tier service while staying within your budget. Whether you need a minor roof repair or a complete roof replacement, RiverLand provides customized solutions tailored to your needs. To learn more, call RiverLand at 662-644-4297 or visit their website, riverlandroofing.com. Please make sure you tell them that you heard about them on MPW Digital. Mr. DeWeese, how are you, sir?
Doing well. Losing my voice a little bit, but otherwise doing well.
Well, that's not good at the very beginning of a show, but
well, it's not ideal. No, definitely not. Wasn't ideal at practice today either.
I bet it wasn't. Well, it's that time of year. Weather starts to change. Get a little sinus drainage. People start losing their voices. In your field, you've been yelling for weeks now, and probably
hope to have several weeks left. So I need a voice.
Yeah, lemon water, little.
I've got some decaf tea with a little honey in there right now. So
there you go.
Try to get me through this.
All right. Well, we can keep it tight if you need to. All right. Ole Miss beats Oklahoma on the road. Fell behind 26-20. Blew a 12-point lead. Fell behind 26-25. And I thought, whoa, well here, boy, been down this road. And then Ole Miss flipped the script. Ole Miss dominates the fourth quarter. Gets a big 11-play, 75-yard drive. They get a couple of stops on defense. They win 34-26. And very, very much in the college football playoff picture as of now. 4 games left, 3 at home, 1 in Starkville. So you got South Carolina, then the Citadel, then Florida, an open date, and then a trip to Mississippi State on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. So it's all right there in front of the Rebels. They'll be favorites, maybe prohibitive favorites in all of the games. As of this recording, Ole Miss is a 13.5-point favorite over South Carolina on Saturday. So, I mean, Pete, I know that games aren't played on paper. They're not played in Las Vegas sports books, but it's right there in front of the Rebels. If I told you before the season, hey, Ole Miss is 7-1, 4-1, in total control of their playoff destiny. South Carolina's underachieving. The Citadel's the Citadel. Florida has fired their coach, and Mississippi State is still searching for their first conference win going into November. You would have taken it.
Absolutely. I think any Ole Miss fan would have. You've got to be pleased with where Ole Miss is, and With everything going on just in the coaching world in general and kind of winding down the season, there's still a lot to prove. But Ole Miss has certainly shown that they're capable of playing with almost anybody.
Yeah, I mean, the one loss was at Georgia, game where they led in the fourth quarter by 2 scores. So, I mean, there's no reason to think that they're not cuddly little Ole Miss. I mean, they have a legitimate shot to make a run in the playoffs like a lot of teams do. I mean, they're one of probably, at this point, 17 teams in the country that can at least fantasize realistically about winning a national title.
Yeah, I mean, that they can. That they're a very real offense. I mean, Lane Kiffin, Charlie Weiss, and the talent they put on the field have found a way to produce against everybody they've played. There's some matchup issues, I think. I think there's some offenses they would match up against that maybe not ideal for what Ole Miss fields. And there are some defenses that I do think would give them some problems, but they're not going to play many defensive fronts much better than the one that Oklahoma put on the field last Saturday. They're not going to play many defensive teams that are coached that much better than that team was last Saturday. And obviously, there was a little bit of a lull and there were some times of poor execution, but for the most part, Ole Miss absolutely had success on offense, and both from a number standpoint, but also from a scoreboard standpoint, they did things against the Oklahoma defense that no one had done at this point in the season. So
the floor is yours, whatever you want to take over. I know you want to about South Carolina's offense, among other things.
Yeah, I do. I want to talk about South Carolina's offense, but I want to actually start talking about the Ole Miss defense. In many regards, they did play much better than they had played the week before. Now, I do think offensively, Georgia's a better football team than this Oklahoma football team, and quite honestly, I think that the thing about college football that's funny in football in general is 1 week a kid can look amazing and the next week he looks like a completely different player. And, early in the season, you watch this Oklahoma team and John Mateer's starting to pop up on Heisman ballots. And then he obviously has the injury and he comes back and he battles through and has had some kind of rough moments. And he did some good things against Ole Miss, but there were certainly some misses on film, both missed throws, misreads. And times, that was kind of caused by the pressure that Ole Miss was getting and the different things they were able to do. But Oklahoma did have their chances, and I'm not going to tell you that I disagree with Coach Kiffin and agree with Venables as far as who the better team was on Saturday. But I do think that Oklahoma had their chances to put more points on the board against this Ole Miss defense. So I do think Ole Miss is going to have to continue to improve their play, in particular their consistency on the defensive side of the ball. So we're just going to look at 6 plays. And these 6 plays are some of the same things that we talked about a little bit coming out of the Georgia game, where Ole Miss had not handled motion and handled certain things very well. And, Ole Miss has really started to lean on a lot of zone coverages throughout the course of the season as it's kind of progressed, but they pick and choose when they're going to play man-to-man, and sometimes I do think that's what gets them in the most trouble. So this is actually a shot of the first touchdown from Oklahoma. And what everybody probably knows and remembers is you get the receiver coming across the field that ends up wide open and gets loose down the sideline. And that's just kind of a little bit of miscommunication. But when you watch it on film, what's more concerning is you had somebody that was more open on the other side of the field. So here, as the motion starts to happen, Ole Miss is trying to disguise their coverage look. And as the motion happens, you see, and it's similar to what we saw against UGA, you have multiple bodies reacting to the guy in motion, and suddenly Ole Miss has vacated the middle of the field as well as the deep outside third. So the 4-man rush causes enough to get the pocket off balance, but they actually have a corner route at the top of the screen that is completely uncovered.
God, he's wide. You don't see anybody that open.
You do not see people that open, and I didn't realize it on the television copy. It wasn't until I got to the coaching copy that you see it. Even here, when the receiver comes inside, this linebacker should take him. And as he takes him, he has to understand, I do not have help, because Ole Miss is using the other linebacker as a spy. Now, that's not a win-win for Ole Miss when you get a linebacker matched up on the slot receiver, and that's what happens right there. Eyes are batting in the backfield, and he's able to pull away and separate. So I honestly can't tell you what the coverage was. I can't tell you what the bust was, but it is evident that the bust happened. And there was certainly some miscommunication on the Ole Miss defense. So here's another clip. You're going to notice a trend. Here's more motion again, okay? And this is one where, quite honestly, Ole Miss gets lucky. So they have Oklahoma has a tight end and two receivers to the left of the formation. One receiver flexed out to the right side. The tailback is also on their left. They're going to motion a receiver across to end up with two receivers on both sides of the ball. Okay, as this happens, it's clear that Ole Miss is going to stay in a man-to-man principle. So when the motion happens, the guy that originally was man-to-man is going to rotate deep, and now the other safety is going to pick up the man-to-man guy as he comes across the formation. The corner to the right side of Oklahoma's offense, the left of the Ole Miss defense, is going to remain in his man-to-man technique. So here, when he gets the inside release, he's going to stay on it. If this is a better ball, the bottom line is this is a poorly thrown ball that is behind the receiver. Now, it's an RPO, okay? What Mateer is actually doing is reading the defensive end. If the end is upfield, he's going to throw a shovel pass underneath to the tailback. If the end squeezes or works inside, he's going to continue wide and he's going to look to throw into the flat. So the reality is, because it's not a true sprint out where his eyes are immediately in the flat, but an RPO where he's reading this defensive end first, it's what causes him to be late. If this ball is thrown quickly and thrown on time, that is 100% a first down by Oklahoma. Instead, the ball is kind of behind. The safety is able to play from a deeper depth, and the receiver doesn't have a chance to break a tackle and fight for the first down. You can see just the reading the end slows him down just a little bit. Ball is slightly out, not a great ball, and Ole Miss is able to get the stop right there. But they were really lucky with that execution and with the handling of that motion. Typically, if you're going to play that receiver man-to-man, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to communicate and pass off, where you take the inside guy, and now the corner takes the outside guy, or you're going to be a little bit more aggressive to come downhill in such a short yardage situation to take away the easy throw to the flat. Again, just kind of moving forward. And this one, there's not motion, but this is just a complete reboot of a touchdown that Georgia threw against Ole Miss. The only difference is what Georgia did was they put one of their best receivers in the backfield and they motioned him out to create chaos. The outside receiver is going to try to clear it out and get skinny. The second receiver is going to show like he's blocking and then release late down the outside. And the third receiver, not coming from the backfield like it did in Athens, but just coming from the number 3 position, is going to work a bubble and try and attract eyes. So you can see here, again, it's fairly well executed outside. They end up creating a rub, and they 100% have the open receiver down the outside. Yep. I think he panics a little bit because he feels somebody upfield in his lap. So he turns and throws the check down, and Ole Miss just comes in. And it's still, listen, it's a gain. I think it ended up at first down, I believe, right? But that's a touchdown if he has a clean pocket and a chance to throw the football, because the whether you want to call it a bust or just a well-executed rub or pick by the offense, bottom line is the best receiver on the team is naked down the numbers, and if it's a clean pocket, you would like to think that an SEC quarterback is going to convert that. And they're certainly going to play a guy this week, and they're going to play a guy again in a couple of weeks when Florida comes to town that has the ability to make those types of throws.
And the guy in Starkville.
Oh, and the guy in Sartful, he certainly has. Yeah. So here's another one. Okay, a little bit later, again, you're going to see another example of motion. This is the exact same concept that they scored on earlier in the game. They run back, they come back to it. This is late in the game, in the fourth quarter. It's going to be the same corner route that came wide open earlier. You see it here, just not cleanly defended. And quite honestly, Mateer misses. He has a pretty clean pocket. He doesn't set a good base, and the ball kind of floats outside on him. This 100% could have been and probably should have been a completion for Oklahoma and put them down tight in the red zone right there. Instead, it's a third down now, incomplete, and they're looking at a 4th and 4, 4th and 5 with the decision to make. Right. And in a close game, obviously those things can matter. And down the stretch, those things are 100% going to matter for this Ole Miss team to achieve what they want to achieve. Here's another one. Again, we're very into the game basically now. We're almost on the last drive. We may even be right on it. And they just come out, and Ole Miss is going to play a cover 2 look to the boundary. So they're going to run a simple fade with an out route by the tight end. He's going to read this corner against this coverage. If the corner comes off on the out route, he is going to try to throw a hole shot with some pace on the ball before the safety can get over the top and make a play on it. The receiver recognizes what happened. He feels the corner start to feather and then fall off, so the receiver throttles down, looking for the hole shot, probably throttles down a little before he should. Mateer pushes the ball a little bit further upfield, and what would have been an explosive play to start the drive ends up an incompletion, moving on to second down. What you want to see is one of two things. You either need this corner to be a little bit more patient and give his safety a little bit more help, or you need to see that safety being more aggressive to get himself off the hash. And there's a lot of different versions of cover 2 read, cut. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. And we showed Oklahoma's version of cut on last week's show, where as soon as somebody presents himself to the flat, the corner's going to jump it right now. It is a very aggressive technique where the safety is being heavily relied upon to now expand and get to that number 1 receiver. Here, the way the safety plays it, with a little bit more of a vertical drop without as much urgency to get to the sideline, makes me think he's expecting the corner to give him a little bit more help than he actually does. And Ole Miss was lucky right there that didn't result in a bigger play.
Because if that's a good throw, he beats one man, and he's running.
Yep. So here we are.
So is that a communication thing? I mean, Pete Golding didn't suddenly start becoming an undisciplined defensive coach. Is that guys that they're not communicating well? What is in your opinion?
Bottom line is players have to execute. And so without knowing exactly what technique and what coverage they were trying to run, I can't fully tell you.
Sure.
But looking at it, I fully think that they were expecting to get more help from the corner. I mean, at the end of the day, the goal is to always make them throw the underneath stuff and rally to it and tackle. Right. And that's obviously not what happened there. So here's just one last example. We're talking Hail Mary time now. We're into the game. We are inside of probably 30 seconds. They're trying to drive down and score here. And so Ole Miss has this deep umbrella on the field, and they just get a little static with their eyes. Okay. You'll notice right here again, it is a 3-man rush against a kind of crippled and young offensive line, and Mateer has to scramble.
Oh, and there he is.
And ends up. But if you look down here at the bottom, the safety very much has eyes in the backfield. Now, the way that this looks to me, these two players play a little bit flat-footed, and it looks to me like they're trying to get to like a cover 3 with the seams being protected by these players that are just outside the hash. Now, what that would tell you is he's got to be responsible for anything outside, but it's his job to collision and probably help to carry. What happens right here with Oklahoma, their outside receiver just runs a deep corner route and nobody takes him. And he ends up open. Now, the pressure doesn't allow the quarterback to get a clean read on it, but it is absolutely a chance to drive the ball in there. So it's discipline. It's communication, and it's just executing within the system. So, again, I'm not going to tell you that I agree with Venables and think that Oklahoma was the better team on Saturday, because the reality is the better teams execute. And
Yeah.
that's what did not happen on Saturday for Oklahoma.
Well, and I'm going to say this because I shouldn't, because it's people love the Kiffin quote, and it was a funny quote and all that stuff. But the question misrepresented what Brent Venables said because it really left context out. It was
Right.
It was a bad question. It was clickbait. It was unprofessional. Got the quote wrong. He got the quote. He left a lot of context off the quote. I don't know Brent Venables. I'm not defending him, but he said, "Hey, I thought we had the better team, but we didn't execute, and they did." And there is that part of the sentence needs to be included in context.
It absolutely turns out that context and knowledge matter.
Yeah.
So turns out it's like that in most facets of life. So
It does. It's a great point.
You know, as we turn our attention towards this South Carolina offense in particular, I mean, just kind of talking about the numbers, right? South Carolina is better defensively than they are offensively. But they are not, and that they have some players, particularly in their front, that are very good. And Ole Miss is going to have to do a good job protecting the quarterback because South Carolina, I mean, listen, that Alabama game was weird. Alabama had a weird defensive touchdown that was kind of luck on their part. They muffed the punt. It was weird. Alabama was the better football team. Alabama should have probably won that game by a bigger margin than they did. But at the end of the day, South Carolina had an opportunity in the fourth quarter to hold on to the game, right? So you look at the numbers and the record's not shiny. They haven't really had just one game that makes you go, man, this is a team on the verge of exploding. But they do have players. It's not a bad roster by any means. And I do think that's where part of the frustration comes from the South Carolina fan base, especially as they look at and talk about their offense. You know, defensively, they're 10th in the league in scoring. They're not as strong as Oklahoma was. They're not as strong as LSU was, especially LSU prior to last Saturday night. They've got 17 sacks on the season. That puts them right in the middle of the road. You know, in the SEC, that's I think 5 or 6 more than Ole Miss has on the season. So they haven't been elite at getting home, but they are getting home. You know, a decent amount. Now, one thing that they have done is they've produced 8 interceptions on the season. And a lot of those interceptions are caused by cloudiness in the pocket and the quarterback not having a stable platform to throw the football. I think where Ole Miss really has to be good is on third down offensively. The South Carolina defense is 16th in the conference in third down percentage defended. Opponents are converting third downs, and if Ole Miss can convert third downs and keep the South Carolina offense off the field, you like their chances even more. I like them already, but you like them even more, obviously, if they're continuing to move the sticks, which you hope obviously equates to points. Offensively, the numbers are abysmal by conference standards. They're last in the league in points per game at 20.38 points per game. They're next to last. They're 15th in rushing. They're only averaging 107 yards a carry. They're 15th in passing 107 yards a game. 15th in passing at 195 yards a game. And ultimately, the issue again is third down. They're next to last in the league at offensive third down percentage. They're not able to maintain. You know, they'll start drives fine sometimes. They'll find some good ways to get their athletes in space, and then you catch them in a third down, and they're just having trouble converting. And so defensively, I think that Ole Miss, right, everybody knows the number one thing you have to do to beat the South Carolina offense, and that's stop the quarterback.
Yep.
Tackle the quarterback. And it's not easy. The guy does not go down easy. He is a big physical specimen with a lot of tools. And I think we kind of referenced it briefly last week.
We did.
You know, talking about him, and I kind of compared him to Anthony Richardson, the former Florida quarterback, and same type of build, probably a little bit more explosive, I think faster than Richardson, but the same type of live arm. The one thing I thought watching this Alabama game was early in the game, Alabama tried to tackle him, and they weren't successful. And at some point, they got on the sidelines, and somebody looked at him and said, take the technique out of the ball game, take his legs out. And as soon as they started being willing to just take his ankles they became much more effective in getting him on the ground. So listen, a couple of these clips I'm just going to play for those that haven't watched South Carolina a ton, for those that haven't seen him a lot since the Ole Miss game last year. I'm going to just let a couple of these clips run to give you a little bit of an idea about how athletic and big and physical he is. I mean, if you watch this from the end zone, they're giving him a pretty basic pass concept. The protection does not help him very much. He steps up, protects the football, makes half the defense miss, and ends up falling forward for several yards. Now, listen, they are, on paper, have given up, if not the fewest, almost the fewest sacks in the conference. They've given up like 8 all season. It's not because they're great in protection. A lot of it has to do with his ability.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, it's his ability to get away from guys and go make things happen. So that's opening of the game. So here's the very next play. You come out, and now they're just going to straight up run him. They're going to line up, and I'll show you what they do and talk about the difficulties this creates. You have 4 wide receivers. You have to put bodies on those receivers. The tight end is the only version of a back in the backfield, and he is lined up to be a downhill run game. So you have to have a minimum of 6 defenders in the box to defend the run, but you also have to have defenders out wide to defend the pass. So again, I'm just going to go to the end zone copy here, and I don't know why I haven't made this full screen yet. They're going to shift out, and there's the run scheme right there. And again, he's just moving bodies. Ole Miss, one thing I will say about the Ole Miss linebackers, and this isn't going to be news to anybody, is they're not massive.
No.
And the matchup of him on them does not go in Ole Miss's favor unless they're going to go and chop the tree down. And they're going to have to at some point. You know, one thing about Sellers is as you watch him, in my opinion, there has been some growth from last year. His IQ, his understanding, there's not a problem. Sometimes it's just a matter of execution. So they're going to start here in a 4 wide set, and they're going to motion the tight end down back into the box. So now they are giving him a simple RPO. The recognition here is good. He has a 6-man box. Where's the 7th defender going to come from? It's highly unlikely to be this guy. He knows this is probably the defender that they can't account for in the blocking scheme. Now, realistically, they should have been safe handing this off because it's the handoff is going to happen away from the addition of that 7th defender. But when he knows that this 7th defender is going to trigger, he knows he has a route backside that is now one-on-one against a soft cushion. The recognition, the awareness is 100% what you want it to be. Quite honestly, it's the execution where his feet aren't bad. The ball ends up in the dirt. He sees it now. He's in the mesh. His eyes are on it. And just ends up incomplete. Maybe slightly tipped by the linebacker that was blitzing. I tried to watch it several times and tell. But the bottom line is you have to create that window to throw that ball when you're going to throw it. And he's big enough and physical enough to do that. And he's not able to get it done. Just a little bit farther. Okay. This is just talk about the tools that he has. The reason his draft status and draft stock is going to be graded much higher than his college performance at this point in his career. And fans are going to speculate and fans are going to question, and plays like this are going to be part of the reason why. They're going to run what's known as a dash concept. So he's actually going to look to his right, and then because he's moving left, he's going to spin out, and he's going to come back to the left of the offense. And on the move, you are going to watch him throw a deep comeback to the sidelines. So he's going to look right, spin out, on the move, across his body. You know, you're talking about a nice, let's see where this receiver breaks this thing off. You're talking about a nice 15 back to 14 or 13-yard comeback on the move away from your natural arm. It's a ball thrown with rhythm. It's a ball thrown with pace. And it's a ball thrown exactly where it has to be thrown and he does a great job getting it there. So again, all the tools exist, all the measurables exist. It's keeping them out of the rhythm of some of those kind of simple plays that get them a lot of success. Now, one thing I do think you are likely to see in this game is what I've kind of come to call as the divide series out of South Carolina. So what they like to do is that they will put two tight ends to one side of the field. Usually it's the boundary, the short side of the field, and they're going to put two receivers opposite. They have a lot of different things that they will do here, but the divide series I'm talking about is where they are going to bring a man in motion, and they have now a kind of a myriad of plays and things that they can do. And what they're going to do with that motion is try to divide the defense and get you going the wrong way, and they're going to use just simple understanding of numbers to try and create issues. So in this case, these two tight ends are going to reach wide to the right. And if the math works out where they can block 2 over 2, he has the opportunity to give the ball to this receiver on a jet sweep. And he's got a chance to try to turn up the sideline. When while those two tight ends are working to the right, the entire offensive line is going to be working to the left. If the numbers are not right, if you are outnumbered to this jet sweep, you have the ability to hand the ball off to the tailback. Well, for the math to work out, you're going to be negative somewhere. You have to be really disciplined. You have to kind of have the right call on sometimes defensively. So they have the option to give the jet, to hand the ball off to the tailback. The third option that they have would be to bring the same motion, send the running back out as a third lead blocker, and now let the quarterback read one of the extra defenders, where Sellers himself becomes the second run option. So I think, Arkansas did some similar things in the game versus Ole Miss, and I would be surprised if South Carolina does not come back into this set to see if they can find success. On this example, there's the motion. He's going to hand it off to the tailback, and they turn it into an explosive. If you watch it from the end zone, when the motion starts, there's the reaction. So now they're not going to block this guy. They're counting on the quarterback handling him with his decision. So they've got a corner out there that they can block. They've got this 18 that they can block. You can't block him. You can't block him. So he knows now, I've got to hand it off or maybe even read this down lineman. As the play develops, the down lineman attacks upfield, hand the ball off. This defender had to respect the jet sweep, and now you've given the tailback a two-way to go. If you're Ole Miss, if you send your defensive end at the running back, if this linebacker is not home, if he is affected by the jet sweep, there's nobody there for the quarterback. And if I'm Pete Golding, the last person I want with the ball in their hands is LaNorris Sellers. I'm going to live with that tailback carrying the ball much more than I'm going to try to live with that quarterback carrying the football. Okay. They will play out wide, empty, 5 wide. They'll play in tight, 2 tight ends. Their third leading receiver is actually their tight end. Now, third leading receiver with 16 catches. They're just not overly productive throwing the football, but clearly they are attempting to target him. And this is the kind of thing that they will do. Again, nothing new, nothing Ole Miss hasn't seen, but in this scenario, they will try to clear things out, create a vertical space with this tight end, and now bring him back into the boundary. Sellers will read the end. If the end is upfield, they can hand it off, try to create numbers in the run game. If that end squeezes, pull the football, drops it off right there, and the tight end is fairly athletic. Simple stuff, but a lot of what they're going to do is going to be based on some version of a read element to give him a chance to make them right offensively. Here, this is just another example of him being a freak. They're going to start in one formation. They're going to motion to an entirely different look right now. They're going to make the defense communicate. They're going to get into what should be what should be kind of a six-man protection with a chip by the tight end, and they're going to try to delay and release this tight end down the middle. Now, the protection is flat out beat. They went up top with a nice little pick. He should be dead to rights, and somehow he gets out of it and turns it into a positive gain. Now, you're looking, this is a 3rd and like 16, 3rd and 15, I think, and they don't convert, but he does end up scrambling for positive yards and almost getting them back. Pete Golding is going to pick and choose when he pressures. He is certainly going to use Perkins and some of the other players as spies on Sellers, but when they have a chance to get him down, you absolutely have to get him down. You cannot afford to miss because he will embarrass you in a heartbeat. So here, expecting a pressure look, they're going to take their 2 tight ends actually, and they're gonna flank them on either side of the tackles, and they're going to use them to help chip and help sort out protection. Alabama shows a massive pressure look, and they actually do a really good job of sorting it out and do a good job of giving him a clean pocket. He does a really nice job himself of moving in that pocket, and you see the accuracy on this deep crossing route. Ball, again, thrown with a ton of pace. And if you give him time, if Ole Miss is going to rush 3, which is what they've shown quite a bit at different portions of the season, you can see him there shifting to the protection look. He feels confident. He knows what's coming, I think. But if you rush 3 and you give him time to move around back there, he does have the ability to push the ball down the field and convert.
Yeah, it's nice.
And this is the last one. It's kind of the last one I want to show you. It's another nice throw. They have some bodies on the outside that are big physical receivers that can run. And this is target number 1 right here. So they're going to use motion again. And we've seen Ole Miss. We've talked about Ole Miss does not always handle motion very well. Well, they're going to use motion right here to try to get a coverage adjustment by Alabama, a play action, and all they're going to do is run that vertical, that skinny post on the outside. Why Bama's safety does not rotate over more, I do not know. But what they're going to try to do here, and I mean, Ole Miss does this typically 3-5 times a game. They're going to keep him on the skinny post. He's going to come underneath on this deep crossing route. He's going to end up out here as a check down. And when this safety stays in the middle of the field and the corner remains outside leverage, expecting middle of the field help, they have the ability to run past you on the outside. And when he can set his feet and throw the football, he can throw it a ways. And there's certainly opportunity. He has a bigger arm than Mateer. Healthy right now. I'm not telling you I think he's as accurate as Nussmeier is when Nussmeier's on, but Nussmeier has not shown the big arm this year. Sellers has the big arm. It's what's around him does not always give him a chance to excel. But when you protect him and when you give him time and opportunity, I do think that he is good enough to make Ole Miss pay. I think that defensively, you're going to have to continue to see an upward trend from the Ole Miss defense in their coverage and in their execution for this to not be a game that Ole Miss fans sweat about late into the fourth quarter.
That's what worries you about this team going forward, right? It's not the offense. You have some overall worries about defense.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Ole Miss has been creative and found ways to run the football, but they haven't been dominant at the line of scrimmage on offense. But they've been good enough to move it on everybody they've played. Defensively, Ole Miss has played well at times, but what high-level offense have they really done it against? Right? There's certainly questions about the LSU offense.
Yeah.
There's questions about the Oklahoma offense, right? And so I don't know if we have seen them. Georgia's arguably the best offense they play, and half the time, half the state of Georgia wants to fire Mike Bobo. So how do we fully gauge this Ole Miss defense? As long as they continue to get stops when it matters, I don't care what they give up in between the 20s. It's getting off the field when it matters and not having a repeat of that Georgia game. But it's going to be about their front for Ole Miss is playing really well. but they're not always getting home.
Yeah.
Right? They're
Yeah.
they're big, they're physical, they're collapsing pockets. And when the defense, when the coverage can sit back there and not overcomplicate things, and when an offense doesn't force them to communicate, they're not bad. It's when when as an offensive coordinator against Pete Golding right now with the kids he has on the field, when you pick your spots to make them move and communicate, they're not always getting the response that Golding wants them to give. Right. And if you can protect it and you have time, you can see that be exploited. And so I think Ole Miss is going to have to continue to try to clean that up. Obviously, we spent 2 weeks earlier in the season talking about athletic and mobile quarterbacks and problems they can give you. And last week, there were some times where Mateer got out and did some things with his legs. And now you're maybe not the best athlete because Green at Arkansas is a hell of an athlete.
Yeah.
But you were talking about a big physical presence with speed, with ability that they probably don't want to design runs for a ton, but they're going to do it some, and he's going to create on his own some. And Ole Miss is going to have to really limit the mistakes in the secondary, and they're going to have to just really kind of mitigate disaster when the quarterback has the ball in his hands.
I know you're not inside the building in Columbia, South Carolina, so you can't answer this with authority, but I'm curious. You're around football a lot. You've been around the college game. When a team's struggling the way Carolina is, and you have such a big emotional opportunity at home like they had against Bama, and it gets away, is it difficult to get guys to go again, or is it just sort of ingrained that, nope, we get another opportunity, top 10 team, national television, chance to upset the apple cart, if you will, in the SEC? I mean, it would be big news if Carolina knocked off Ole Miss and Oxford.
No, absolutely. And I do think that, I think Beamer to some degree, and let's be honest, I feel like that program to some degree, they kind of like having that underdog chip on their shoulder.
Yeah. It's coming.
I think that it is. They're not used to being at the top. And I say that not in a negative way. They're more used to trying to take the crown off the head. And so I don't know. I think ultimately a lot of times it comes down to the leadership in your locker room. But the other piece that is so different now than it ever has been, and it's no different than what Kiffin said earlier this week about Watkins and people, calling him, and they've got people in their roster getting phone calls too.
Oh, for sure.
And it's not just so how strong can a locker room be? How after that blow, how are morale? I mean, look, but there's several games still to play, and if they can go win those ball games and they can do things, it kind of changes the outlook of their season. At the same time, if you're an individual now and you go play well, it changes the outlook on your future potentially. So there's certainly motivation there. The question is if things don't go well for them early, how long do they stick around?
Yeah.
That's what you always wonder about to me for teams that haven't reached their expectation in games like this later in the season.
What will be interesting is, for Ole Miss, if you just look at this psychologically, if you find a way to win this game, I mean, no disrespect to the fine young men who play for the Citadel, but, let's be real. They're 1-6, I think, maybe 1-7. I don't know the exact number. They lost in blowout fashion to Mercer. It's not an open date next week for Ole Miss, but it's the closest thing you'll get to one without it being one. And,
it is.
You're not losing to the Citadel. So if you can find a way to beat South Carolina, you do get a chance after this 3-game swing of at Georgia, at Oklahoma, home against South Carolina to
Absolutely. Yeah, and that happens, and you're going to hear the similar conversations that you heard during the Washington State week of we've got to take it seriously. We want our fans here. We want a great environment. And they're not going to be at the same level that Washington State was. But if you're Kiffin, it is a time to maybe look ahead a little bit right? To start preparing for the following week. It's a time to break tendency. It's a time to work on things that you want to be better at and things you feel like you're going to need down the road. And so, yeah, I mean, it's important. You got to get through this one first, obviously, but absolutely. I mean, you probably peel back a little bit on their bodies next week.
Yeah.
Right. You maybe look at some things that you don't intend to call on Saturday, but you want to start working. And so, that certainly could play into Ole Miss's hands moving forward. If it gives them that extra week to just shore up some of the things that they need to see growth in.
All right. Last thing, you're usually pretty good at this. You've pretty much nailed them all year. What's your kind of expectation going into this one? How do you think it plays out?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think Ole Miss should win the football game. I mean, I believe that. I will never work in Vegas. They will never give me a job trying to peg spreads because it's not my thing. I'm not good at it. But the flip side of being South Carolina and struggling last week and kind of having that little bit defeating blow against Alabama is you're Ole Miss and you get up and you go on the road and you have this major win, right? Both programs have to overcome last week.
Yeah.
You can't have a letdown after all of the emotion and the high of last week against a matchup that was you really were looking forward to, and then come into this one and you can't walk into this game thinking that if you're Ole Miss today, this isn't Georgia, this isn't South Carolina, or this isn't Oklahoma, it's going to be a breeze. You can't walk in with that mentality on Saturday, and I think that's part of the reason that Kiffin has been so big this week, hyping up the crowd. He knows that naturally there's probably going to be a mental letdown and maybe a drop in focus, because again, these are still kids, right?
Yeah. He's asking for fans to bring the juice.
He 100%. He wants to try and refocus anybody that's not. And he wants to create energy that naturally was there last Saturday morning and might not be the same for their players innately when they get up this Saturday.
Next week, it's Ole Miss and the Citadel at noon Central on ESPN Plus. It's Ole Miss's non-TV game of the year. It will stream, so you'll be able to see it, but it's not on network television. We'll, I guess, probably take a look back at South Carolina a little bit next week. Probably start looking ahead to what is coming up. We'll look at the Citadel, the fine young men of the Citadel. I'm sure they play really hard, but I mean, let's be real. We try to be real at MPW Digital, and if Ole Miss loses to the Citadel, well then, boy, there are issues. Yeah. So we'll look at the Citadel. We'll start looking ahead to the last couple of games of November as the stakes get higher and higher as the weeks go on. So for Pete DeWeese, I'm Neal McCready. Again, thanks to the people at RiverLand Roofing for sponsoring our show. Thank you to Caroline McCready for producing the show. We will be back with you next week. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you again soon. Good night.